We take a little Tiger, boy, he partied. He missed that putt, so he's still a +4. Mickelson, you know where he is. Okay, I'm looking forward to this. Barry Levinson, one of the great directors that we have in this country. Obviously, Oscars for many a movie. We start with, Rain Man. Can't go any better than that. Diner, he did. Bugsy, he done 1,000 of them. Does a lot of biopics now for HBO. He works with Pacino all these years, too. Al plays Joe Paterno. HBO's got that movie tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. We'll have some fun with that. And we welcome into our studio. I don't think we've ever had a movie director, an Oscar award winner in this studio, and we say hello. Barry, welcome. How are you?
How you doing? How you been?
Nice to have you with us. Let's start with your Baltimore roots. I mean, when you're from Baltimore, that is, there is a legacy with George Young used to be a good friend of mine, the old general manager of the Giants, and he's a Baltimore guy. He swears by it. You probably swear by it too. When you grew up with the old Colts, with the 58 Unitas, and you're a big sports fan, you grew up in that, it sticks with you your whole life. It kind of sets the tone for you, right?
It does. It does. I mean, I was back, if you can imagine this, we used to go out to Westminster when the Colts with the Unitas and Raymond Berry and sit out there on the field and watch them play. And we saw, oddly enough, the beginning of what became that 2-minute drill. And it had never been done before.
He was phenomenal with that.
Yeah, and we'd see, like, after everybody left, and Raymond Berry be running down the field all alone, and Unitas would throw a pass, looks like he's going in a totally different direction, and all of a sudden Berry would make this move to the sidelines, catch the ball 2 feet out of bounds, and that was what, that year is when they began to do that kind of move, which was, like, at that point, a whole innovative thing.
And they won the back-to-back titles. Where were you in 58 when they beat the Giants at Yankee Stadium? Do you remember 23-17 and Amici scored? Where'd you watch that game?
Baltimore, TV. Couldn't go to New York, so we were watching on television.
So that's a humongous. Unitas.
Yeah. That was like amazing.
First championship Baltimore ever had.
It's also, you understand, it's a small little place beating New York team. And the Giants, great teams. So it was like, wow. I mean, it was like we're suddenly on the map.
And Unitas' great drive, the field goal that ties it, then the touchdown by Amici, and then they come back the next year and beat the Giants again.
I know.
And you had think about it. Baltimore got him out of the scrap heap. He gets cut by the Steelers and he ends up with the Colts, and he becomes really the signature of Baltimore athletics in your youth growing up in the city.
That's right.
And
how big a deal it was?
Yeah.
On the if a jukebox that you can listen to the last last minute and a half of the game on the jukebox. They actually had a record, and you just listen to it again.
On the 58, they had on a
jukebox.
And you go to a little bar in Baltimore, you can plug it in and hear the Unitas down the field again. All right, how about the Orioles? Were you a baseball fan too, Barry, or no?
Yeah.
Because they were great in the mid-'60s. Brooks, Frank, how about Baltimore beating the Dodgers in '66? Where were you when you were probably in just getting to college, right? 1966?
Yeah, in college.
And you were at American University.
Yeah.
So, that's a great... Did you go to American University to be when did you know you wanted to be a film director?
Oh, way later. I had no idea what I was going to do. I literally... I was in and out of school a bunch of times, and I really didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do. And at American University, the thing was, I had a course that was dealing with television, and I took it just because I figured, well, how hard can that be? Television.
You thought it was a K course,
you
right?
watch TV and you see shows and whatever. You figure, all right, I was like avoidance, not to take tough courses. And the professor there took an interest in me and got me a job at Channel 9 in Washington, D.C. And then I began to get an interest in television and production. That's the way I began.
All right, and Carol Burnett, too. You began with Carol Burnett.
Later on.
It was later on.
Yeah.
Where was your first big... All right, Channel 9. What was your first big show? Was it Burnett, doing writing for Burnett?
That was the most... That was joining a successful show. That was the first real...
Early 70s, right?
Yeah. That was a big break for me,
When did you begin to get off the writing and start getting into the directing?
Well, after working with Mel Brooks, because I did several films with him. I did Silent Movie, I did High Anxiety, and we worked with him, during the writing process, during the shooting of it, editing. It was like going to, Mel Brooks University of Film. So for 3 years, I worked with him continually. And I used to tell stories about the guys I grew up with at the diner. And he was the one who actually said, well, you should write about that. And that was the first kind of got into my head. Maybe I can write about that. And that was getting away from, that kind of full-out comedy into sort of dramatic comedy. And when I wrote it, I wanted to direct it. I wanted it to sound and feel like that which I knew.
And that's obviously got the famous question, the 58 championship game in that, so that's where we tie it in. That movie came out in 82, did it not? Or was it 81? 82. Was that your... I was just graduated from college.
That was the first film I directed. I mean, I co-wrote a film called Injustice for All that Al Pacino was in.
Great movie.
A few years before that.
So that was the first film that you... So how hard is it to make that step to get Hollywood to accept the fact that you want to go from writing screenplays and film to actually directing a film? How hard is that transition?
It's tough because everybody wants someone who's already done it, but, at some point you break through. There's a point in time, because I did Injustice for All, I got nominated for, Academy Award as a writer. So you start to build up some of these credits, and then you say, I want to direct. And then you try to make that next step. It's always, it's a constant struggle. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. You have to kind of find your own way and then try to get enough attention that someone's going to take a chance on you. And that's the way it works.
And Diner was a very good movie. Did it get nominated for an Oscar in 82?
Screenplay.
Did you win that? Did you win?
No.
That was somebody else who wrote. Did you write the screenplay for that?
For what?
Diner?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
And you got nominated for an Oscar in that. And you directed it.
Yep.
Mickey Rourke. Who were the other big actors in that?
Kevin Bacon, Ellen Barkin, Paul Reiser, Peter Gutenberg, Steve Gutenberg, Danny Stern.
A lot of those young guys who are just getting their career started. How hard is it to make the transition? You write, you screenplay, do that, and then you direct, and you have to have a relationship with the actors. How hard is that to make that transition into the director mode?
It didn't feel that difficult to me, but you are, you're going into, you're suddenly working with an enormous amount of people. So you got production designers, cinematographers, sound, all of these departments, and you got to get them all in sync with what you're trying to do. And that you've got to start to impart what it is you want to accomplish so that everybody's on the same page, actors as well. And so it's a learning curve, but if I go back to, say, the time working with, Mel Brooks, you start to see the mechanics of the day-to-day mechanics of what it takes to make a film.
Now, did you grow up? Who was your growing up? You loved you like sports and you loved the movies growing up, correct? Yeah. Did you have a favorite actor in the 50s and the 60s growing up?
I think I liked a lot of different, a bunch of different people. Everybody from, say, on one side you can say Marlon Brando, Paul Newman films I loved. James Dean, he was only around for a couple years. Montgomery Clift in the early days of that. I also loved John Wayne and those westerns.
Oh, he did.
Loved John Wayne
and John Ford doing all those films he did and everything else. People don't realize Wayne did all these B movies for 100 years before he got that big break with Stagecoach. They forget that. Is there a particular movie? Now, everybody's got that film for the young kid that kind of attracts them to it. Was there a movie for you as a young kid that you went to the movies and you sort of, gosh darn it, what a movie, I want to do this? Did you have one for yourself?
I never thought of it in terms of I want to do it. But as a kid, the first movie that made an impression on me beyond it just being entertainment was when I saw On the Waterfront. That one jumped out. Elie Kazan directed it. And that was the first time I was curious. And I remember, because, in those days you stay and then you can watch the movie again, you could just...
You could stay and watch it.
You could stay and watch it again. I want to see, who did that? And I was curious. And then I see, written by and directed by. And that was the first time when I saw Elie Kazan, I went, oh, he directed that. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I thought that was important to know because I was so fascinated by the little things that happen in the movie. That I had not seen before.
Lee J. Cobb is in that,
Lee J.
right?
Cobb's
and
great.
Carl Malden was in that.
Rod Steiger.
And that won everything in 54. Was Brando... Now, did he do A Streetcar Named...
Before.
He did it before, so he was a big star going into that movie, correct?
Yeah.
Correct. You mentioned Montgomery Clift, the movie that I love. We all know he did From Here to Eternity. He was good in that. But the movie that really I love, he did the Red Rivers with Wayne. He did the one I love more than anything else is the Place in the Sun in 1951.
Yeah, great.
What a movie he is.
Fantastic, wasn't it?
Oh God! And Stevens won I think I'm not mistaken, he won the Oscar for that, directing that movie. George Stevens, didn't he direct that movie?
He directed the movie. I don't know if he won or not.
But that's a great.
It's a fantastic film.
Because he's so conflicted the whole movie. He's got Shelley Winters on the one hand, and he's got Elizabeth Taylor on the other hand.
Yeah.
It's such a. Did you go to American thinking that you were going to be a screenwriter?
No.
And you did. You just
I never had any understanding of any of that.
You just kind of fell into it when the guy gave you the job.
I was literally like a kid with little or no ambition. You know, my big ambition in life was not to work in my father's appliance store. That was my main ambition.
A lot of kids had that. Mine was, I don't want to be my father's jeweler.
Yeah.
He was the jeweler, same thing. You don't want to do that. So that was your anything but that is fine by me.
Anything but that, and I was, and there was the avoidance of not. I don't want to take certain classes that could be too hard. So television, I took a course on television and radio, and I actually began to, and I liked that. And that began to give me a little bit of a sense of something that was interesting to me. And then I worked at Channel 9 in Washington, D.C. I was a floor director. It was like a training program. You know, I worked the hand puppets on the kiddie shows and, made slides for the weather, and you did all that kind of stuff.
Wow. What was your budget for the diner?
The movie?
Yeah, probably not that much, right? That was not.
No, it was a fairly low budget.
Yeah, I bet you Bugsy was expensive, right? When
Bugsy
you did that.
was much more expensive,
and and Beatty was good in that movie.
He was terrific.
Good movie.
Yeah.
Do you get to know did you cast these movies, or did the film companies cast them for you?
No. When you're directing the film, you do the casting.
Oh, you do the casting.
Yeah.
You do that. So the big movie, 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers, they don't do that. The director does.
Well, I mean, they have, in a sense, they have probably more input now because they're making all those kind of Marvel comics things, action things or whatever. So they have a bigger push now than if I were doing, Diner, they don't really care that much. It's not that expensive. They don't care. If it would have been a real expensive movie,
they're going to have some input.
And then by the time I got around to doing some of those, you have enough, cachet with a studio that they'll trust you to, cast correctly.
And Pacino is, he's one of the American classics. I mean, he's right there. There's a lot, we all know, some actors are personalities.
Yeah.
And some actors are actors. He is kind of both, but he is an actor first, correct?
Yeah, he's incredible to work with because he'll try things. If you say, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? And he's up for it, and we'll see if it works. And if not, we'll move on. But he loves the process of acting.
Does the director? I kind of look at the director like Phil Jackson's got to deal with Michael Jordan. And he's not coaching Jordan; he's a partner with Jordan. When Barry Levinson is working with a guy like Pacino, is it a partnership? Or are you still the guy who is basically coaching him of how you want the part to be played?
Well, you got to give him the guidance of it in terms of because there's arcs to scenes and the momentum of a piece. So sometimes if you're going to go real slow with it, it's going to knock it out of whack for where you're going. So you got to guide it. And at the same time, you want to give a certain amount of freedom to the actor, but you got to be like taking it in a certain direction of where you want to go. Now, within it, you can play around and experiment and try things, make up things or whatever. But, if you think in terms of a piece of music, you can't suddenly let the bottom fall out when it's supposed to be rising.
So you have to give him guidelines, and then you trust him to do his deal.
Yeah, well, you keep working on it until you can get it.
What's the difference? You did Hoffman too. He was great in The Rain Man. Are they similar? Give me the characteristical acting differences between Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino. In their prime.
They're different. I don't know that I've seen many actors are the same. I've worked with De Niro, 3-4 times already, and he'll work in another way. Every actor approaches it in a different way, and you have to deal with that and work with that. Because they got to get into the character, and then what would happen? So what's happening? Am I angry? How angry? Am I yelling? Am I quiet? Do I take it down? Those are all the little moves that you want to try and as you put it together.
And a lot of those great actors love to do the film, do something different. Rain Man, he's a savant. Pacino, Son of the Woman, he's blind. Daniel Day-Lewis, he's played a lot of those kind of roles, too. A lot of the great actors like to challenge themselves with those kind
different
of parts.
Different types of things, yeah.
Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you know you had a tremendous hit with Rain Man when you directed that?
No. Because what happened was, well, first of all, the studio wasn't crazy about the movie, and they were worried because autism at that point wasn't known, and now you got one character who's autistic, and they're going, well, the audience doesn't know, they don't understand
know what this means, right?
And this movie may not do any business whatsoever. And we started very slowly. We opened, as an example, we did say $6 million one weekend. And then all of a sudden we did $7 million the next weekend. And then it was 8, then it was 10, then it was 12, then it was 15. It just kept going up, which nowadays it doesn't happen that way. It's like the movie kept getting discovered and growing and growing and growing.
I love the movie that tells you a great story. A lot of guys like movies, they want to see perfection with the acting. A lot of people like the movies, they want a little historical scenario, Lincoln. But me as a moviegoer, I don't love the comedy so much. I want to go to the movie and I want to learn something, and I like the great story shown to me. What draws Barry Levinson to the movies? What makes a great movie to Barry Levinson?
Look, I think you have to have a good story, because then, what's the point of watching 2 hours of something? You got to get drawn into the story, right? Now, at the same time, you got to basically also have those characters take you on that journey, because if you don't relate to the characters, then the story itself begins to fall apart. You have to have the story, and you got to have strong characters to it.
Combination of both. One can't live without the other.
No,
correct?
It doesn't work.
Now, you've made a lot of movies for HBO. They give you great freedom there. Is there a difference from directing a movie that's going to be in the theaters and a movie that's going to be on HBO?
Not really, because in the end of the day, everything ends up on television anyway, right? I don't know about you. I saw some of the great classics I saw on television, because they weren't in a movie theater. So if I saw Citizen Kane,
you saw it on TV.
I saw it on TV. Maltese Falcon, saw it on TV. Casablanca, saw it on TV. So it's like they have to work. Now, if you have a big scope, Lawrence of Arabia in a movie theater
is different.
Is going to be different. But most stories, will work, filmically or in television.
Right. How long did it take you to do Diner? Take you 3 months?
I think we shot for 42 days, I think.
42 days. How about the editing process? How long does that take?
Could take 6-7 months.
It could.
Yeah.
All right. How long after you've done the movie is it released? 6 months? That's up to the.
Well, I mean, sometimes it can take from the time that you finish sometimes to the time to come out. It could be, almost a year. When you make a movie, you got to assume, all right, I'm going to give myself, it's going to be a year involved with this one movie. That's why sometimes you think twice. You go, this is okay, but do I want to spend that kind of time and effort on this particular piece? Am I passionate enough to give myself 1 year with this piece of work?
Yeah. Yes. How passionate were you? How long did it take you to do Paterno?
Paterno, I think we started in maybe June, something like that. So
not too long.
We're short of a year.
Would you have done Paterno if you didn't have Pacino playing Paterno? Or is that a big attraction for you to direct?
Well, I mean, because Al had talked to me about it, and he was passionate about doing it, and I was interested in it. And then I said, let me think about how would we handle it, and went from there. So he had been wanting to do that story for a while.
And he has played football coaches, plenty of football coaches before. Did you follow the Paterno story as a citizen very carefully, and the whole Sandusky thing, say 4 or 10 years ago?
I wouldn't say that it was carefully, but I mean, I was aware of it. And the shock of it all is that I know, I think what draws me to it, it's like, okay, there was this, predator in terms of Sandusky. And that's Sandusky. But here at the same time is this man, Paterno, who was revered, who was looked on as not only a great coach, but he was an educator. He believed in the education for his players. He graduated 85% of them. He was involved in building the library and all of these things. And you say, well, then what happened that this man with this sense of ethics, etc., is ultimately didn't do what he should have done? What happened, or what do we not understand? And that was what was compelling to me about it, and that's what obviously excited Al to play that character.
So you're looking to explore that dichotomy of what went wrong with Paterno.
Yeah.
That's what drew you to it more than anything else. Not telling a story about Jerry Sandusky.
No.
You were interested about where Paterno went off the tracks. That's what interested you.
Yeah, because that wasn't like a guy win at all expense. I don't care. I want to win. He believed in education.
Right. He had the right principles.
All of these principles, and yet this happened. So that to me was fascinating. It's the great fall from grace in a sense.
Wow, Barry Levinson, super job. We continue with him. We'll get into this Paterno story. HBO, it's tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, 22 after the hour. We come back here on Mad Dog.